Even though the evening in Atlanta was as boisterous and packed as usual, Kirk could feel a heavy silence growing inside his head. With one hand on the steering wheel and the other continuously reaching for his phone whenever it lit up, he was navigating through traffic. "We need to talk" was still the message on his lock screen. Jasmine. Kirk let out a long breath and tightened her grip on the steering wheel. He struggled to put the past behind him, but that one message had the ability to pull him back. He stopped on the side of the road and gazed at the text for a considerable amount of time. When he eventually typed, his jaw tightened. "What is this about?" The response arrived sooner than he had anticipated. "Please, come on over. It is crucial." Kirk reclined in his chair, pressing his head against the headrest. His gut urged him to disregard it. The one chapter he never wanted to reopen was Jasmine. However, he couldn't quite put his finger on why the urgent, serious tone of her message unnerved him. Meanwhile, across town, Rasheeda was seated in her office studying fashion samples and drawing notes for the upcoming launch. She exuded composure, stability, and organization. For the first time in a long time, things seemed normal again. Business was performing nicely. Her marriage seemed to be solid. Recently, Kirk has been very calm, attending more events and improving his communication skills. She didn't frequently feel protected in her relationship. She pulled up her phone for a second and noticed a gossip page post come up. Jasmine spotted in Atlanta again. After pausing and gazing at it for a while, Rasheeda locked her phone. Anyway, she's irrelevant now. But even if she didn't want to admit it, the name scratched at something deep inside her. A scrape she ignored, but one that would quickly develop into something much worse. At last, Kirk restarted the vehicle and drove in the direction of Jasmine's residence. His chest felt heavier the closer he got. It wasn't simply awkward to see Jasmine again. It was a trigger, a memory of suffering, treachery, and upheaval he would never want to experience again. However, something in her voice gave him the impression that this wasn't a joke. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an attempt to get attention. It was authentic. Jasmine was seated at her dining table at her apartment, gazing at a sealed package and a pile of documents. She stroked the edge of the envelope, her fingers shaking a little. Her eyes were exhausted, almost lifeless. "I didn't want to do this, but he deserves to know," she muttered to herself. She froze when there was a knock on the door. She wiped her eyes swiftly, took a steady breath, and opened it. Kirk was stiff, cautious, and irritated as he stood there. "Let's just get to the point," he stated as he entered. Jasmine gestured for him to take a seat. With his arms folded and his gaze icy, he sat rigidly. Her fingers were curled together uncomfortably as she sat across from him. "What's happening?" Kirk asked in a pointed tone. Before she spoke, Jasmine swallowed. "Kirk, if it weren't serious, I wouldn't call you." He leaned forward a little. "Enough severe things have happened in the past. Simply state it." With trembling hands, Jasmine took up the envelope. "The way you believe. This has nothing to do with the past. It's something that wasn't properly addressed. Something you must understand." Kirk became more irritated. "Stop talking in riddles. What are you discussing?" Slowly, Jasmine opened the envelope. She pulled out the documents and gave them to him. Kirk's demeanor drastically altered when he glanced over the first page. "Paternity revaluation request" was written in big characters at the top of the page. Stunned, Kirk glanced up at Jasmine. "What is this?" Jasmine's voice broke. "Kirk, it's possible that the last test wasn't reliable." The room was so completely silent that it seemed oppressive. Kirk turned the pages, finding updated information, explanations, and lab notices. His respiration became erratic. "What precisely are you saying?" Then, he insisted, "Just express it plainly." Jasmine used her sleeve to dab at a tear. "Maybe what transpired years ago wasn't what it appeared to be. Perhaps you made a mistake in judging me. Perhaps everything was different." With a start, Kirk got up and paced the room. "Are you aware of what you are doing at this moment?" He yelled. "You're taking me back to hell. This caused me to suffer. My marriage was on the verge of collapse. I came very close to losing my family." Jasmine sat silently, her face hidden by remorse. "I know you hate me," she replied quietly, "but the lab contacted me recently. They redid several records. They discovered discrepancies. I had to tell you." Kirk felt like the ground under him was moving. This wasn't only an error, it was a bomb. One that would shatter the tenuous harmony he had established with Rasheeda. Jasmine inhaled tremblingly. "Kirk, please retake the exam. To be clear, for the truth, for us both." Kirk froze. "Take another test." The mere use of that term sent his thoughts into a tailspin. The media would go berserk if there was a retest. Rasheeda's heart would shatter again if she had to retake the exam. Retesting would cause a deep hurt that he believed had long since healed to reignite. Jasmine nodded slowly as Kirk covered his face with both hands and said, "This will destroy everything, perhaps." Kirk, however, the reality never goes away, it returns. Kirk remained silent. He picked up the papers, folded them, and tucked them into his pocket. At last, he remarked in a hushed voice, "I need time." He got up and made his way to the door. With remorse in her eyes, Jasmine observed him. "I apologize," she muttered. "However, you had to know." Kirk walked away without turning around. He was struck strongly by the night air outside. In an attempt to stabilize himself, he inhaled deeply. After opening the vehicle door, he sat down and gazed at his phone. Once again, it glowed. Rasheeda's message. "Dinner is ready, baby. You're where?" Kirk gazed at the message. He was unable to respond. He had no idea where to begin. His thoughts were loud, agonizing, and disorganized as he put the phone face down, turned on the engine, and drove into the night. "How do I tell her?" was all he could think of. "How can I possibly describe this?" The night seemed to go on forever, and the weight of the truth was greater than before. Kirk's hands gripped the steering wheel more tightly than before as he drove into the metropolis. He didn't notice any of the lights, music, or people that filled the streets. That envelope was the only thing on his mind. Those documents. He believed he had permanently fled that nightmare. When all he wanted was to vanish, every traffic light seemed to be taunting him and keeping him still. He wanted to put Jasmine's comments out of his mind. Act as if he had never seen anything. And act as though the past wasn't resurfacing. However, it was, and despite his best efforts, he was unable to ignore it. Rasheeda, meanwhile, was at home with the boys, wrapping up supper. Every few minutes, she continued to look at the front entrance, waiting for Kirk to enter with his typical weary grin. However, he didn't. She looked at the time, looked at her phone, checked the door once again. Nothing. "Will Daddy be arriving?" one of the youngsters inquired. "Yeah, baby. He just got held up," she said, forcing a grin. However, she began to feel something within that she hadn't felt in a long time. When things were awful, she used to get that deep, ancient, nauseating worry. In an attempt to silence those thoughts, she shook her head. She assured herself, "This is not that. He has performed well. He has been dependable. He's just running late." However, the issue with old wounds is that they never really heal. All they do is wait for pressure. And the pressure was increasing tonight. At last, Kirk parked into a peaceful parking next to a park and turned off the engine. The automobile was filled with oppressive quiet. His chest felt constricted as he attempted to breathe carefully while resting his forehead on the driving wheel. Once again, he took the envelope from his pocket. I opened it, gazed at the phrases he had previously committed to memory. Potential errors. Data has been updated. It is advised to retest. He felt nauseous after reading each phrase. His thoughts returned to the turmoil of the past, including the disputes, the cameras, the humiliation, the betrayal Rasheeda experienced, the emotional breakdowns, the therapy sessions, and the years-long rebuilding of trust. Because of inconsistencies, Jasmine now wanted to restore everything. Kirk made a sound of frustration and bitterness. He was unsure whether to drive home, weep, shout, or vanish. He was aware of one thing, though. He was unable to inform Rasheeda, not right now, until he realized what the heck this meant. That is, he took his phone out. There has been no response to Rasheeda's, "Where are you? Be home soon." He wrote, "Busy." He looked at the message for a while before erasing it. He was unable to lie. Not immediately. However, he was also unable to be honest. He closed his eyes and leaned back once more after putting the phone aside. Still rattled after the encounter, Jasmine sat in her apartment across town. She kept looking at the door as if Kirk could return. The guilt was killing her, even though she knew he wouldn't. She had no desire to harm him. She also didn't want to harm Rasheeda. She had no desire to become entangled in this mess once again. However, she became alarmed when the lab contacted her, informed her that something didn't match, and discussed reviewing previous data. She didn't think she could do it on her alone, so she gave the one person who was directly involved a call. Perhaps I ought to have waited, she thought. Perhaps I ought to have kept it a secret until everything was verified. However, it was now too late. Rasheeda paced the living room in the meanwhile. Dinner was chilly. The lads had gone to their rooms, and she had a sinking sensation in her chest when she was by herself. She picked up her phone once again and called Kirk. It rang once. He didn't answer twice or 3 times. The unpleasant scrape from before seemed more intense now. Her pulse rate increased as she began to tap her foot. "All right," she said to herself. Don't make hasty judgments. However, her thoughts failed to pay attention. As Rasheeda had already visited this location, the delayed responses, the ambiguous messages, the absences, the mysteries, he was pardoned by her. With him, she had rebuilt. However, she would always remember. At last, Kirk pushed himself to drive home after starting the vehicle once again. The home was silent as he entered. Too quiet. Rasheeda had her arms folded while seated on the sofa. Her eyes scanned his face right away, looking for something like guilt, worry, anything. Are you all right? Her voice was stern yet kind as she requested. Kirk paused. That hesitancy was like a strike to her. He said, yeah, just had a lot going on. Her eyes narrowed. Work-related matters. Kirk nodded too quickly. After giving him a long, uneasy glance, Rasheeda said, yes. She didn't trust him, not even a little bit. At the other end of the sofa, Kirk took a seat. Rasheeda did not approach. She refrained from bending over him. She didn't grin. There was a strange feeling between them. It was as if an invisible wall had materialized out of nowhere. Kirk was eager to talk. He wanted to share everything with her. However, how can you say to your spouse, hey, do you recall that incident that almost brought us to ruin? It may not be finished. He was unable to. Not quite yet. He sat silently, gazing at the ground. At last, Rasheeda let out a sigh. You skipped meals. For you, I saved supper, he said softly. I'm not really hungry. She gently nodded once more. She was unhappy, as shown by that nod. Suspicious. Hurt. All right, she responded as she stood up. I'm going to bed. Kirk felt smaller than he had ever felt as he watched her go. He was unable to hold her accountable for her behavior. She had every right to be wary. Kirk collapsed back onto the sofa as the bedroom door shut. In an attempt to settle his thoughts, he ran his hands over his face. However, the reality would not go away. He removed the papers once again and gazed at them in the low light. In the hopes that he had misinterpreted, he read each phrase again. I'm hoping this was an error. I was hoping this was nothing. However, the documents were authentic. The issue was genuine. This was not a dispute, a blog post, or a rumor. It was a document that had the power to completely upend his life. Hours went by. Kirk remained still. He didn't get any sleep. Rasheeda, meantime, was lying awake in the bedroom, gazing at the ceiling. She couldn't stop asking herself, why was he late? Why didn't he send a text? Why did he act so aloof? Why did he seem to be afraid? In an attempt to stop the ideas from spreading, she rolled onto her side and pulled the cover up. However, once they get going, they never stop. God, please don't let this be what I think it is, she eventually said to herself in a murmur. Kirk returned to the living room and looked at the time. 3:17 a.m. He wiped his eyes and muttered, I have to handle this, but how? He was aware that he need answers. He was aware that he need clarification. He was aware that he had to face Jasmine once again, but he was also aware of everything would fall apart if Rasheeda discovered the truth before he did. Leaning back, he closed his eyes and let everything fall on him. Things would worsen tomorrow, much worse. Due to the truth, it never remains undetected for very long. Kirk's face was illuminated by morning sunshine that peeked through the living room drapes. Slowly, bewildered, disoriented, and exhausted from hardly sleeping, he opened his eyes. He had fallen asleep for just a few minutes at a time, his thoughts choked by the same fear. What if everything collapsed once more? His neck stiff and his thoughts hazy, he sat up. He could hear faint activity coming from the kitchen, but the rest of the house remained still. Rasheeda was conscious. He remained seated for a while before mustering the strength to get up. He was reluctant to enter the kitchen. The inquiries in her eyes were something he didn't want to confront. He didn't want to act as if nothing was wrong. However, he was powerless. At last, he got up and made his way slowly to the kitchen. Rasheeda was brewing coffee at the counter. She didn't look back, didn't grin, didn't say good morning, just quiet. And it was worse than shouting to be silent. Kirk cleared his throat. Good morning, he murmured. The sound was brief and piercing, as if she were interrupting him before he could say anything. He moved in closer. Are you upset with me? Rasheeda turned and folded her arms firmly while resting against the counter. She had a tranquil look, but it was the type of serenity that indicated she wasn't at all calm. I'm not angry, she said. I'm simply trying to understand why you came home claiming to have seen a ghost. Kirk took a gulp. He was unsure of how to respond without being honest. He was unable to tell the truth. Rather, he offered nothing. I simply had a demanding day. Really, Rasheeda answered. So why did you not eat? Why did you not speak? Why did you remain silent? Do you really believe that didn't confuse me? Kirk cast a downward glance. He detested the fact that he was causing her pain. He detested the fact that she was feeling this way once again. I apologize, he muttered. She said, "That's not an explanation." She was correct, too. However, he lacked one. Her phone buzzed on the counter before she could press any more. She reached for it, and as soon as she saw the screen, her whole body tightened. A gossip blog notice. Kirk noticed her eyes widen, but he missed the headline. She clicked it right away. Her countenance shifted from shock to perplexity to rage to fear. "Wow, just wow," she said. Kirk moved in closer. What took place?" She flipped the phone over. Kirk felt sick to his stomach. It was there. Kirk spotted meeting with Jasmine late night. Love Triangle returns for season 13. It's big, bold, and brutal. There was a fuzzy picture underneath it. Though it wasn't quite obvious, it was sufficient to identify him and Jasmine as they stood outside the cafe. Kirk sensed a tilt in the room. No, he said. That is not the case. Rasheeda's eyes were pained, glassy, and blazing with rage. You spent yesterday night with her. Then, Kirk parted his lips, closed it. The reality was nuanced. However, the picture wasn't. He moved in closer. Listen, Rasheeda, why didn't you inform me? She insisted. I didn't want to cause you any concern. You didn't want to cause me any concern. She gave a sour chuckle. Do you believe that keeping things from me improves the situation? Have we not gained any knowledge? With his heart racing, Kirk massaged his face. It wasn't what they are portraying. She gave me a call on a crucial matter. Why would Jasmine give you a call for anything? Rasheeda? She has no right to get in touch with you. Not one. Between them, tension flared. Kirk gave it another go. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't anything like Rasheeda interrupted. But you didn't tell me. That's the issue. That's the issue every time. He was aware that she was correct. He was aware that this was his error. However, Rasheeda's phone buzzed once more before he could say anything more. More alerts, additional blog entries, more comments, and then the worst one yet. Sources claim Kirk and Jasmine seen arguing about new baby questions. Rasheeda froze, her chest constricted, her gaze slowly raised to Kirk's face. What is this? She asked quietly. Kirk felt sheer terror flash through his heart. It's not what you think, he blurted out. It's misinformation, it's guesswork, it's what newborn inquiries. She whispered. It seemed as if her voice was breaking in two. There isn't a new baby, he said. None. So why would they say that at all? She inquired. Kirk said nothing. The response she dreaded the most was quiet. Her face broke. Oh my God. She exhaled. Kirk, what did you do? Kirk grabbed for her hands, but she withdrew, as if his contact had burnt her. He let out a trembling breath. It's not a baby. It's outdated material. The Jasmine situations. Something from the past came up. Something is unclear. Something that what emerged. She cut me off. Kirk paused before saying, tell me, just for a moment. However, that moment was sufficient. Rasheeda's expression stiffened. You have something to conceal from me once more? It's not verified. He attempted, she said. So you are hiding something. Fear, remorse, and fury shot through Kirk. He was itching to yell. His goal was to destroy the blogs. He wanted to destroy the encounter, the photo, and the documents in his pocket. I just need time to figure things out before I bring it to you, he whispered to Rasheeda. Figure out what? She insisted. Kirk closed his eyes. He was unable to express it. Not quite yet. She would be broken by it. Rasheeda took a step back, as if she were staring at a stranger. She said, this is sick. This, after everything we've been through. She reached for her keys before Kirk could respond. Where? Rose and fell with rapid, broken gasps as she gripped the steering wheel. Her eyes burned with tears, but she wouldn't let them fall. She would not allow herself to be weak once again, but the sense of betrayal she experienced was genuine. Deep, chopping. That picture kept coming back to her. Those headlines were all she could hear. She could not stop seeing Jasmine's face. The hardest part was that she couldn't stop thinking about the past. Like ghosts, every feeling she had suppressed emerged. She reached for her phone and clicked on social media. Her heart fell. She was already being tagged. I'm already speaking. I'm giggling already. I'm already guessing. It was becoming a circus in her relationship. Once more, leaning back, she shook her head and tossed her phone into the passenger seat. She said, this man is going to break me. Kirk paced the living room like a confined animal once he was back at the home. His desire was to run. His goal was to make things right. However, he was unsure of how. At last, he took the envelope out once again. Now the paper felt thicker, as if it bore the burden of his errors. He gazed at the inconsistent lines. Retesting. Reevaluation. If this comes out before I figure it out, it's over, he muttered to himself. Jasmine, meanwhile, read the same headlines while lounging on her sofa. She put her palm over her lips. Oh God. she muttered. This is becoming unmanageable. This was not what she wanted. She didn't request that the photo be made public. She didn't want Rasheeda to suffer harm. She didn't want her name to be brought up once again. We need to talk, she texted Kirk. This is going to explode up. Nothing was leaked by me. Kirk did not respond after seeing the message. He didn't know what to do. Everything was becoming worse. What about the reality? It had not yet been released. Rasheeda didn't go too far by car. With her hands shaking on the driving wheel, she sat in an empty parking lot behind a closed store. Everything seemed oddly numb, as if her feelings were too thick to fit within her chest. Even while her heart and thoughts were racing, she remained still for a considerable amount of time. She just shook her head gently while staring straight ahead in silence. How did we find ourselves back here? She muttered to herself, but she knew the answer in her heart, because each time she trusted Kirk, something returned to put it to the test. Something from the past reappeared, like if it had been waiting each time she thought things were finally steady. She inhaled deeply and blinked vigorously, holding back her tears. Throughout her life, she had shed enough tears for this guy. She was not going to collapse once again. Not right now. Even though she tried to be strong, a terrible thought crossed her mind. What if this is the thing that eventually destroys us? She clenched her hands and put her forehead to the driving wheel as the thought struck. Back at the home, Kirk seemed to be going insane as he paced in circles. The picture of Rasheeda's heartbroken, furious, and betrayed face kept coming back to him. He had vowed to himself that he would never make the same look again. Frustrated, he punched the air. He had no idea how the photo got out. He had no idea who had released it. He had no idea how the bloggers had learned so quickly. However, he felt uneasy about it. He reached for his phone and looked at Jasmine's message once more. We must have a conversation. This is going to explode up. Nothing was leaked by me. He was reluctant to answer. More drama was not what he wanted. He didn't want to add to anyone's conjecture. But Jasmine was the only person with the answers he needed. Meet me, he texted back. Same location, right now. After putting on his jacket, he locked the door behind him and left. Even though it was overcast, Jasmine was already waiting with her arms crossed and her sunglasses on at the cafe where they first met last night. Her foot was tapping incessantly, and her hair was pulled back, suggesting that she was under stress. She got up as soon as she saw Kirk coming. Do you believe that I did this? Before he even sat down, she said. Kirk spoke softly but firmly. I'm not sure. As of right now, I have no idea. Why would I post a picture of us online? She yelled. Do you believe that I want Rasheeda to be upset with me? Do you really think I want this mess once more? He let out a long sigh. I'm not making accusations. I just don't comprehend how the image was obtained. Jasmine used trembling fingers to push her hair back. I promise I didn't call any blogs. Kirk. I didn't submit a photo. I had no idea that someone was observing. He studied her for a moment as he gazed at her. She appeared genuinely afraid. Sincere frustration. Really overburdened. He trusted her. However, that was of no assistance. Look, she added, dropping her voice. This is getting crazy fast. The narrative is already being told by the blogs. We are all being dragged by people. I'm getting messages. Rasheeda's name is everywhere. And your marriage. She stopped herself. Kirk rubbed his temples. I know. I am aware. For a short while, they both sat in intense silence. Then Jasmine took out another envelope from her handbag. Kirk flinched as if he had seen a weapon. What's that? More paperwork, she muttered. They sent a second form. Something about verifying previous findings appropriately. I didn't open it. I didn't want to do this alone. Kirk gazed at the envelope on the table between them. A simple white rectangle, but it felt like a bomb. He didn't touch it. He didn't want to, because everything would become true the instant he did. Jasmine whispered softly. I didn't want to drag you into this mess again. However, the lab contacted me. They claimed that some old files had been reprocessed or whatever. They're examining old samples, checking irregularities. I became terrified. I called you. That's all. Incredulous, Kirk shook his head. This is insane, he murmured. Jasmine gave a nod. You believe I want this? Do you really think I want people to believe that I'm attempting to trick you once more? No. I detested giving you a call, but not doing so seemed wrong. At last, Kirk picked up the envelope. He gazed at it for a considerable amount of time. Why is this happening now? He muttered. I'm not sure, Jasmine said. However, whatever it is, it won't go away. Kirk clenched the envelope in his hand. At that moment, a vehicle door across the street banged. Jasmine and Kirk both turned, and their hearts fell. Rasheeda stood at her vehicle, her face flaming with astonishment and betrayal, her chest rising and falling, her eyes blazing. She had trailed behind him, or maybe she already suspected. Perhaps she was pondering as she drove. Perhaps she started using social media. Perhaps she saw that someone had tagged her in a different picture. Perhaps she made the connection. Whatever had transpired, she was now present. She also seemed to be on the verge of blowing up. Kirk swiftly got to his feet. "Wait, Rasheeda." "No." Across the street, she yelled. The air was sliced in half by her voice. On the walkway, people turned to stare. Jasmine froze in her chair. With a trembling hand, Rasheeda gestured towards them. "So this is what's happening when I'm going crazy at home," Kirk frantically responded. "It's not what you think." And he took a little step in her direction. She cautioned, "Do not take another step." He came to a quick halt. She was not in tears. She wasn't frail. Her anger was a result of years' worth of wounds, suddenly resurfacing. She responded, "You lied to me. You said it was insignificant. You said that your job was causing you stress. However, you were with her, once more." "It wasn't about that," he pleaded. "It's a serious, complex issue," she yelled. "Oh, I'm sure it's complicated. Everything about you is difficult." Jasmine slowly got to her feet. "I swear, Rasheeda, this wasn't about don't talk to me," Rasheeda said. "You are not allowed to speak to me. Not after everything." Jasmine gulped and cast her gaze downward. Rasheeda returned her focus to Kirk. "You promised me," she murmured, her voice finally breaking and trembling. "You assured me that we would finish this. You said there wouldn't be any more secrets. You assured me that you would never subject me to such humiliation." Kirk said, "And I meant that. I still have it in mind. So what is this?" She pointed to the packet he was holding and shouted. Kirk froze. She had witnessed it. She was aware of its significance. He parted his lips, but nothing came out. And whatever remaining faith she had was crushed by that silence. Rasheeda let out a brief bitter sad chuckle of anguish. She said, "You can't even tell me the truth." He blurted out, "It's not fully confirmed. I didn't want to frighten you, so you planned to hold off till I heard from the blogs." She yelled, "Before you came clean, were you going to let the world humiliate me?" Rasheeda gave a gentle shake of her head. "I'm done speculating about what you could be concealing." She retreated in the direction of her vehicle. "Please, just listen," Rasheeda, Kirk pleaded. However, she barely hesitated once before opening the vehicle door. "I'm not sure if I can forgive you this time," she murmured in a broken voice. She entered, shut the door firmly, and drove away without turning around. With the envelope still in his fingers, Kirk remained still on the street as the taillights vanished. "I'm so sorry," Jasmine said. Kirk, however, failed to hear her. He realized then that this wasn't simply another error, something he had been trying to avoid all along. At this point, everything collapsed. The home seemed vacant, too quiet, still too much. Still holding the envelope tightly, Kirk sat in the living room. The paper's words seemed heavier than before. Kirk sat in the living room. The paper's words seemed heavier than before. Every statement endangered the precarious existence he had created with Rasheeda, and every word shouted danger. He made an effort to think clearly, to understand what Jasmine had told him, and what the documents suggested, but he was unable to do so. The reality was getting out of hand. Never before had he felt so confined. There was a buzz on his phone. Rasheeda sent me an SMS at this moment. "I am unable to do this. I need room." He let the phone fall on the table. His chest constricted. He wanted to contact her, apologize, explain, and ask her to remain, but he was unable to do so. Not quite yet. He had no idea whether she would pay attention. He recalled her angry, heartbroken expression in the parking lot. That instant had burned itself into his memory. He was unable to remove it. He was unable to forget the suffering he had inflicted. Kirk moaned softly as he brushed his hands over his face. "What should I do?" he muttered out loud. On the coffee table was the envelope. He wanted to burn it, discard it, and vanish. However, he was unable to. Even if they ruined everything, he wanted answers. Rasheeda had parked her vehicle a few blocks away in the meanwhile. She was breathing heavily and trembling. She felt a deep sense of betrayal. It was the idea that Kirk had been associated with Jasmine once again, not simply the picture, the rumors, or the falsehoods. Her thoughts raced over every recollection of the past, including the late nights, the disagreements, the never-ending drama, and the tears she had wept. She had previously struggled to forgive him. She had struggled to regain her faith in him. Everything she had constructed suddenly seemed to be falling apart in a matter of seconds. "I can't do this. Not again," she said as she gave herself a strong embrace. Kirk's phone rang back at the home. He looked at it. Jasmine was phoning. After pausing, he responded, "Kirk, you need to relax." Jasmine urgently said. You can't let Rasheeda see this before you figure it out. I am aware. I understand, Kirk said, attempting to regain his composure. However, she noticed me. She looked at the picture. The envelope caught her eye. She is enraged. Jasmine reiterated, I know. Listen, inhale deeply. I'll take care of some of this. Before anybody else is harmed, we'll discover the truth. Just hold off on saying anything just now. Kirk combed through his hair. I'm not sure if she will pardon me this time. Jasmine's tone became softer. You'll handle that in the future. You must maintain your composure at this moment. After hanging up, he sat quietly. He felt as though he was carrying the weight of the world on every muscle in his body. Hours went by. Rasheeda was nowhere to be found. It was chilly in the house. The air itself was heavy. He heard the front door open at last. Rasheeda stepped in. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. Kirk, she muttered, desperate to find the perfect words. He glanced up. Rasheeda, she said, raising her hand. Don't. He swallowed. Please just listen, she said. I've heard enough. I no longer know what is true. I'm not sure who to trust. It's not what it looks like, he said quickly. Then why don't you explain it? Why conceal it? Why pretend that you spent last night with her? Kirk's throat tightened. I wasn't with her in that manner. I received a call from Jasmine about a severe matter from the past. Before I knew the information, I didn't want to concern you. Rasheeda gave a headshake. You never stop lying, yet you never want to worry me. That's the issue. It's falsehoods all the time. I'm not lying, Kirk said. I promise. I haven't done anything to cause you harm once again. Rasheeda's voice cracked. So why does it seem like I can't trust you anymore? He took a step forward. Because you have faith in me. Just give me a chance to properly explain, please. Before I can tell you the truth, don't allow this picture and these stories ruin us. She took a step back. I've already given opportunities. I've previously extended forgiveness. My life has been reconstructed around you. And now this. Kirk's voice became urgent. Please, Rasheeda, it's different this time, I promise. I assure you that I did nothing improper, not right now, never again. Her cheeks were wet with tears. I'm not sure whether I can trust you. I'd want to. God knows I'd want to. However, I'm no longer sure. He took hold of her hands. One last time, please have faith in me. Please. I'm able to resolve this. This is something we can resolve. However, I need your permission. She gave him a long, intense stare. Fear, hurt, and rage were all fighting inside of her. Her mind was flooded with all the memories of suffering, treachery, and late nights. Even if she wanted to scream, flee, or take a step back, she still wanted to trust him. She said, I don't know. Kirk confidently said, I'll prove it. I'll demonstrate everything. I'll put things right. Don't leave me just yet, please. She gave a headshake. Kirk, you've already come close to losing me. Nearly. And right now, I'm not sure whether almost is sufficient. Kirk's heart broke. Please, Rasheeda, don't give up on us just yet. Please. She remained silent. She just turned away and headed into the bedroom, shut the door. Weary, Kirk collapsed onto the sofa. The mail was unopened and resting on the table. The truth was still there, waiting to either destroy them or, if handled properly, rescue them. He gazed at it, aware that he needed to move quickly to prevent the situation from becoming worse. Years of love and labor could not be destroyed by hearsay, blogs, and gossip. Then his phone began to buzz once again. Jasmine. He responded right away. She responded, Kirk, you need to move quickly. You need to make amends with her. She is afraid after seeing everything. I am aware, he said. I'm not sure whether she will even pay attention. Jasmine firmly said, you have to try. If not, things may end before the truth is revealed. After hanging up, Kirk combed through his hair. He was aware that she was correct. He needed to confront Rasheeda, tell her everything, and find a way to convince her. He inhaled deeply before entering the bedroom. With her arms folded, Rasheeda lay on the bed and gazed up at the ceiling. When he came in, she was still there. He said, I'm going to tell you everything. She remained silent. He dropped on his knees, next to the bed. Everything about Jasmine, the envelope, the rumors, etc. I promise to give you the whole truth, no secrets. I must tell you about it. At last, she looked up at him. Her eyes were swollen, red, and hurting. You had best not tell lies. He muttered, I won't, I promise. Not now. Never again. She gave a little nod. That was all the authorization he needed. He took out the papers from the envelope, opened it, and started describing everything slowly, carefully, every nuance, every problem. Rasheeda paid attention. Her jaw gritted as her fists gripped the covers more tightly. Sometimes she quietly sobbed. Sometimes she interrupted, and sometimes she simply looked at him in shock. Hours went by, and by the conclusion, the flames of rage had somewhat subsided, even if she was still shaken. At last, she remarked, "I need time." "I am aware," he said. "Take as much time as you need. I'll hold off. I'll make this right. I'll go to any lengths." Leaning back against the cushions, she nodded. The storm had subsided, at least for the time being. However, the conflict had not ended. Not quite yet. There were still rumors, gossip, and headlines. Jasmine was still there. Kirk was certain that it would take all of their remaining tolerance, trust, and love to endure this, and the wounds would still be there. Atlanta was tense the next morning. The morning dawned as if nothing had changed, but the weight of the night before was felt in every room, every wall, and every quiet nook of the home. Folding his hands over the envelope again, Kirk sat at the kitchen table. He had read the papers numerous times and committed every word to memory. However, the truth wouldn't make things right on its own. He was aware that Rasheeda's confidence had been damaged not just by Jasmine but also by the falsehoods, gossip, and years of difficulties they had faced. Slowly, he heard the front door open. Rasheeda walked in, her demeanor cautiously determined. Although her eyes were fatigued, she felt calmer today than she had the night before. "Kirk," she murmured. "Rasheeda, he stammered, not knowing where to begin. She steadied herself by putting her hand on the table. "Tell me everything. Don't hide. No justifications. No one should be blamed." Kirk gave a nod. After opening the envelope, he placed it flat on the table. "This is what Jasmine brought to me last night," he replied, gesturing to the documents. "The lab discovered some irregularities in the outdated paternity test from years ago, which is why she phoned me. I didn't sure whether it was genuine at first, but it is, and I went to see her because of this. Nor for her, nor for anything else, simply to comprehend the situation." Rasheeda's eyes became wide. "Inconsistencies? By what do you mean?" He inhaled deeply. "According to the lab, there may have been a problem with the first test. They want to retest the correctness of the samples. That's all. Nothing more. Nothing romantic, no plots, no secrets, not at all like that." Rasheeda blinked as she processed what he had said. The image, the headlines, the rage, and the dread were all replaying in her thoughts. She gradually came to the realization that maybe she had made a hasty assumption. Perhaps she had given in to the rumors. "Are you claiming that Jasmine isn't attempting to meddle in our affairs? It's not about her, is it?" "No," Kirk firmly said. "It has to do with the truth. That's all. I didn't go see her for any other reason, I promise." Rasheeda leaned back and let out a slow breath. "What about all those blogs? The pictures? A photograph was taken without any context. That's all." It made everything seem awful, but it wasn't. She shook a little as she glanced down at her hands. "I'm not sure whether I'll be able to quit feeling wounded. It's challenging. After everything," Kirk said, reaching across the table. "I am aware. I get it. I caused you pain. I am aware of that. I am unable to retract it. But if you let me, I can make things right." Rasheeda met his gaze. She finally saw the honesty she had been longing for, the desperate attempt to save their shared existence. "All right," she muttered. "We'll do this. However, I need time. I can't simply act like it's okay just yet." Kirk said, "I'll wait. I'll hold out as long as necessary. I'll show you." The tension gradually subsided but did not go away as they sat in quiet for a while. Although it wasn't a complete solution, trust wasn't restored in a single conversation. It was a beginning. Kirk called Jasmine later that day. He said, "We need to handle this carefully. Rasheeda is now aware. She's willing to listen even if she's shaken. Before the whole truth is revealed, we must ensure that nothing else blows up." "I get it," Jasmine said. "I want to avoid ruining everything. The picture wasn't leaked by me. I didn't do anything to cause you harm. I just phoned because it was the proper thing to do." Kirk gave a nod. "All right, for now, let's keep it between ourselves. Everything will be made evident by the exam." The call was terminated. Knowing that at least that portion of the mayhem was confined gave Kirk a little sense of comfort. Rasheeda, meantime, was gazing out at the street from the living room window. Her thoughts kept returning to the past. All of the hardships, battles, and heartaches. And now this the picture, the envelope, the rumor. She was alive but weary, feeling conflicted, but ready to give him another opportunity. Kirk came up behind her and casually touched her shoulder. He said, "I know it's hard. I am aware that I have made errors in the past. However, I want you to know that I'm not keeping anything from you this time. Not from you, not from anyone." She looked up at him. She said, "I want to believe you." He replied, "I'll make it easy for you to believe me." They gave each other a lengthy, silent embrace for the first time in hours. They were hanging on, even if things weren't perfect. The results of the retest were received the next week. The first paternity test had been correct. The lab verified. There were no errors. There are no contradictions. There are no surprises. Kirk brought the documents to Rasheeda and set them down on the table. "You see," he remarked, "everything is good. Nothing was altered. There's nothing to be concerned about." Rasheeda attentively examined the papers after picking them up. She let out a sigh of relief. "So, is everything really all right?" "Everything," Kirk said with a kind smile. "I swear." Her eyes gleamed as she gazed at him. "The amount of stress this produced is unbelievable. We were on the verge of losing everything once again." He grasped her hands. "I am aware, and I'll take all necessary steps to ensure that it doesn't occur again. No rumors, no secrets, nothing, only us." Finally allowing herself to relax, she nodded. Kirk, Rasheeda, and the children sat down together later that night. Slowly, the house was filled with laughter. A brittle but developing feeling of tranquility had taken the place of the stress. "We survived it," Kirk said, glancing at Rasheeda. She gave a kind grin. "Barely," she teased. "Yes. However, we made it through." For a little time, it seemed as if everything may finally be okay. However, Kirk's phone buzzed once again just as they believed the storm had passed. An anonymous number texted me, saying, "You think this is over? Reconsider. Season 13 isn't done yet." Kirk froze. His heart skipped a beat. He gave Rasheeda a glance. "What is it?" she inquired. "I'm not sure," he murmured hesitantly, "but it looks like our troubles aren't finished." Rasheeda's gaze became wide. Fear and annoyance reappeared, but this time they dealt with it together. If Season 13 had taught them anything, it was that they would have to face any obstacles as a team. Whether they were rumors, falsehoods, or secrets, the truth had come to light. The immediate situation was over. However, what about the future? There was still uncertainty about the future. And somewhere, Jasmine was waiting and observing, aware that her part in the mayhem was not yet over. The last words lingered in the atmosphere. The 13th season is still ongoing. And with Kirk and Rasheeda, nothing is ever easy. Kirk and Rasheeda,